Welcome to Motherhood in ADHD. I'm your friend, Patricia Sun. My mission is to be a lighthouse for mothers with ADHD, helping you find your path to success by learning to appreciate your ADHD as an asset. I'm seeking to change the paradigm that ADHD means your life is doomed to be a hot mess. So I'm sharing strategies and encouraging you in your pursuit of happiness to love who you are every day of your ADHD life. Hey there, successful mama. It's your friend Patricia. I cannot wait to share one of my new favorite books with you. Ever since my son Joseph turned 1, I told myself I need to get back into reading because I love reading, but really took a hiatus through pregnancies and kids. And it's been quite a few years since I had read for fun, and I missed it. I love filling my brain with knowledge, and so as I'm reading all of these books, I love to share the ones that really made a difference for me with you. Now, I'll keep it honest here. Most of the time, my reading is actually audiobooks because I can listen to them on the go, in the car. Anytime my kids aren't making a lot of noise, I pretty much have an audiobook going, and I get a lot of them from the library. I'll download some every once in a while on my Kindle, but since that's something that's free, my library, I definitely will take that option all day long, which means sometimes I have to wait a while for my book to show up in my queue, but when it arrives, I get really excited. Because when I see that email that says, your audiobook has been downloaded, it just makes my day. Unfortunately, sometimes it's Pete the cat that got downloaded, but, what are you going to do? Okay, so the book we're going to talk about today is called The Big Leap by Hendricks. And the full title is The Big Leap, Conquer Your Hidden Fear and Take Life to the Next Level. The whole idea behind his book is that he asked the question, how can I extend the periods of contentment in my life? So how do I be happy? How do I continue to be happy when I am happy? How do I find happiness when I'm not feeling happy? He dives into the obstacles that are holding us back. He uses the phrase upper limiting of when we kind of hit this wall where we can't push any higher and be happier. We have to dissolve that wall. What's holding us back? And then how do we spend as much time as possible in what he calls the zone of genius? So I know I got a lot out of my current read when I have lots of pages of notes in my bullet journal. Usually I have 1, maybe 2 pages on a book. I've got 3 for The Big Leap. And it's not a very long book, so that's a lot of notes for, it's a shorter book, a quicker read/listen. So he talks about the different zones that we live in. The first is the zone of incompetence, where basically we are just not good at stuff. So we should just avoid doing those things. It's wasting our time, our gifts, our energy. Figure out a way to outsource that, to avoid it. Don't waste your time. You're just making yourself miserable. And then there is the zone of competence, where you can do that, but other people could do it just as well. So you can live in that zone, but you'll feel unfulfilled because you're not really tapping into what you were truly meant to be. Then you have your zone of excellence. And to live in this zone, you do these things extremely well. You can make a good living doing them. You could be just fine hanging out in your zone of excellence. But what he's asking us to shoot for is above that, the zone of genius. And this is where you will have ultimate success and satisfaction. You are uniquely suited to do these things. It really draws upon the special gifts and strengths that you have as a person. And we need to learn to listen to the call of genius on our lives. When we hear that little voice inside that's directing us to that wonderful place. But the problem is we're taught throughout our lives to ignore that and push it away. And usually by the time people reach midlife, they've learned to just tune it out completely and they don't even know it exists anymore. And to give you an example of these, the zone of incompetence, I loved because his example that he put in the book happened to me, is that he was writing about a lawyer client who was trying to fix the printer in his home office. And he spent all day trying to mess with this stinking printer. He couldn't get it to work. He spent hours and hours on it. He was like, I know I can get this done. And he's working so hard trying to fix this, and he's just spinning his wheels. And the result was he didn't fix the printer. His wife was mad because he'd spent all Saturday dilly-dallying with this printer. He didn't hang out with his kids. He really ruined his Saturday by insisting that he work on this printer when it is not what he's good at. He was a lawyer. He charges like $1,000 an hour. He easily could have paid the 16-year-old kid down the street $100 to get rid of the old printer, run to Office Depot, put the new printer in, and the 16-year-old would have been done in like 2 hours. Tops, probably less than that. And we get stuck in this like weird, like little gerbil wheel where we're doing things that we're not good at and we just stay there. Why? Why are we staying in that spot? In your zone of competence, when you're talking about like, things that you can do well, but you're not fulfilled. For me, like that example is like cleaning my house. Can I clean my house? Yeah, I will get everything clean, but like I don't enjoy cleaning my house. I have no fulfillment out of that. I would much rather hire somebody else to do it who would be more efficient and may actually like it, but I can get it done. Like there's nothing special about my cleaning skills. They're, passable. The zone of excellence for me is when I was teaching middle school. I loved teaching middle school. It was fun. My students were goofy. I loved the connections and relationships that I would build with them and creating these wonderful humans. And I made a good living at it. But there were a lot of parts of it that I also didn't enjoy. And it started to wear on me after a while because of all the like politics and the bureaucracy. I was a really great middle school teacher, but that's not necessarily where I was meant to be forever. I'm really hoping that this podcast is part of my zone of genius. I'm hoping that this is where I can really help some mamas to know that their life can be better, that they can be calm and peaceful, that they can find a way to live in harmony with their ADHD brain and still get things done and feel pulled together and succeed at being a great mama in the way that looks best for you. I'm hoping that all the skills that I've accumulated along the way between teaching and being a manager of teams and my personality of, being so detail oriented. And I hope that all those things are going to come together to show that all the struggles that I've gone through have led me to this spot where I can make a really big difference in other mamas' lives and their happiness. Pray for me, y'all. I sure hope that's where this is going. Now, who should read this book? I mean, it's aimed at anybody that would like to push forward to the next level. But like, just be aware he's also looking at a lot of like childhood issues. And so you might not be at the place where you want to look at those things. I think you should at some point. Don't shy away from the scary things. Eventually you should deal with those, but maybe you're just not quite ready right now. Gay gets into really examining your childhood, finding those obstacles that you may not even realize you were struggling with. And he asks some tough questions about where you want to go, but he explains things very easily. Like it makes sense to me and it's not too complicated. Let me read a little section here so you kind of hear his tone. This is where he's talking about the barriers that keep us from reaching our full measure of success. Okay, there are 4 of these barriers. The first barrier is the false belief that we are fundamentally flawed in some way. If we carry this feeling within us, we sabotage our success because we think we're essentially bad. If something good happens, we must mess it up to offset it because good things can't happen to bad people. The second barrier is the false belief that by succeeding, we are being disloyal to and leaving behind people in our past. If we harbor this feeling within us, we sabotage our success because we think it's disloyal to our roots to soar too far into the stratosphere. The third barrier is the false belief that we are a burden in the world. If we carry this feeling inside us, we sabotage our success so that we won't be a bigger burden. The fourth barrier is the false belief that we must dim the bright lights of our brilliance so that we won't outshine someone in our past. If we hold this feeling inside us, we tend to hold ourselves back from expressing the full potential of our innate genius. So these are all ways that we create upper limit problems where we just can't push through that like glass ceiling. And he goes through really clear, concise questions on how he calls it dissolving the barriers. He doesn't say you overcome your obstacles, you dissolve the problems. I like his clear, concise questions that help you find your zone of genius. And they are, what do I most love to do? What work do I do that doesn't seem like work? In my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction to amount of time spent? And then fourthly, what is my unique ability? And I like how he kind of like walks you through step by step on narrowing this down and really putting into words what you feel is your zone of genius. He had some really great quotes along the way. My favorite is, if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. And I've been telling myself that a lot because I definitely tell myself, oh no, I can't do that, or no, that's too hard, or like I like talk myself out of stuff before I even started, and I realize like all I'm doing is reinforcing that I can't do that thing. So I've been working really hard on speaking positivity and pushing myself forward. Now there is part of the book that was a little bit of a struggle for me. Sometimes I was like, this is some hippy dippy nonsense. Like it's just like what? Like stuff that was like just a little too out there for me. I'm pretty pragmatic. And so if you're more out there, you probably would be like all in on this. I recognize its merit and I understand part of it, but I don't quite grasp all of it. Like I'm like too logical, too black and white to like fully embrace some of the thoughts he had on Einstein time. But I wouldn't let that tiny portion of the book that was kind of like, about, it was like one chapter. To me, the benefits far outweigh that one chapter that I wasn't super excited about. So my major epiphany in the whole thing was just the different barriers that I was using. Like I mentioned, I was like negatively talking myself out of things before I even started. And he talks about like quite a few different barriers that people generally subscribe to. Things like worrying or squabbling, blaming others, criticizing, injuries, breaking your word, not speaking significant truths to people, deflecting compliments. And now that I've read this book, I see this behavior everywhere. It cracks me up, like the amount of brilliantly intelligent and beautiful and successful people that I know who are constantly toning down things. It's almost comical. One of my favorites was the deflecting compliments, because I think women are especially prone to that. Like if you tell your friend like, wow, you look amazing today. Like you can tell you've been working out. You look so good. And then they're like, oh, but this dress, I mean, it's like 5 years old and I bought it at a discount store. It's just not a big deal. And, I really wanted to get something new, but I didn't have time to go to the store. And they like put on this whole thing about like why they don't look good. It's like, no, you just need to say thank you and just take that compliment in and like, breathe it in and like let it feed your soul. You don't have to downplay it. And I think women do that all the time. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It is hard not to do that after a lifetime of, having that habit ingrained in you. But now when people say something nice to me, I'm like, thank you so much. You can still recognize a struggle where if you're like, oh, like that speech didn't go quite how you wanted. And someone's like, hey, I really liked your speech. That was awesome. You could say something like, thank you. I was worried because I wanted more time and I had so much more to say, but I'm really happy with how I went. Like you can still mention I wish I had more time to talk without like poo-pooing on their compliment, if that makes sense. The other one that is a huge culprit for me is worrying. I'm going to read you this paragraph of his description of worry. He says, worry is usually a sign that we're upper limiting. It's usually not a sign that we're thinking about something useful. The crucial sign that we're worrying unnecessarily is when we're worrying about something we have no control over. Worrying is only useful if it concerns a topic we can actually do something about and if it leads to our taking positive action right away. All other worry is just upper limit noise, designed by our unconscious to keep us safely within our zone of excellence or zone of incompetence. And then he gives this example of like, you leave the house and you think about, oh my goodness, I think I left like the coffee pot on. And so he says the two things you need to ask yourself are, one, is it a real possibility? Yes, it is a real possibility that I left the coffee pot on. And two, is there any action I can take right now to make a positive difference? It's like, well, yeah, I could call back to the house and tell my son to turn it off. Okay, like, just take care of it. If you're just worrying to worry about something that may happen one day, I don't know, but I'm just going to have a panic attack over it. Like, that's not constructive worrying. That's just putting yourself in a negative place so that you're not focusing on how to make life better. So I really loved that section. And so as a recovering worrywart, I enjoy that because I obviously know that worrying's not good, but the way he explained it made me realize why it was a problem and like when I should be worrying about things and when I need to let them go. I also really enjoyed the section about talking about like squabbling. Like I think for sure squabbling is something that women tend to do, like making up drama out of nothing is one of the barriers. So, you know, watching that in action has been eye-opening in the people in my life. And just changing my mindset where like before I used to always think like bad things would happen in threes. And so, like, if 2 bad things happen, I'd be like, oh no, what's the next thing going to happen? Like, I'm literally, like, trying to prepare myself for something that hasn't even happened. I have no idea. It doesn't even exist. Like, how do you prepare for something that's, like, completely just doesn't exist? Like, oh my goodness, it just made me realize, like, how goofy that was. You know, and there's always that thing of, like, oh, when's the other shoe going to drop? Like, just because something happened doesn't mean something else bad has to happen. Like, man, like, we humans just stir up a lot of nonsense in our head and, like, cause problems that don't even exist. And then he also has a little section about relationships. And this was another epiphany for me. One of the things he said couples often do is projecting. So when couples project in a relationship, they'll say the other person is doing the bad habit that they're actually doing, which I realize I do quite a bit with my husband. Like if the kids are arguing and like somebody hits somebody else, I'll be all irritated at him like, well, you just weren't watching them. And it's like, well, also I didn't jump in and stop the argument before it got out of hand either. So really I'm mad at myself for not doing something and I'm putting that on him. And I'm a firm believer in that like you can only change yourself. You can't change other people. And so if I just focus that energy on me, I can make way more impact than I can whining to other people about problems. So to wrap this episode up, I really enjoyed Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap. I highly recommend it if you are ready to make some changes. I love his phrasing. He calls it benign vigilance in your life of just being aware of what's going on. Kind of like driving, how you always just kind of like scanning the road, making sure no one's, you know, popping out in front of you. It's the same thing in your life. You just have to have this mindset of like being aware, but like not panicking that like around every corner is coming a speeding vehicle. It just like allows you to like fine tune the things that are holding you back, allows you to make better choices about what you should be doing and what's going to push you towards where you want to go and what you need to let go in order to achieve even more success and happiness. So, Mama, I hope you find The Big Leap to be just as encouraging as I did. And please let me know if you decide to read it. Have an amazing week, successful Mama, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to Motherhood and ADHD. For more resources, head over to our website, www.motherhoodandadhd.com.